Welcome to Unashamed and Afraid, a show unashamed about sexual addiction recovery and unafraid of coming unto Christ for healing, where we share real recovery stories, learn from experts, and share resources that actually work. So join us in being unashamed and unafraid.
Chris, how's it going, man?
I'm good, man.
Yeah. Are you recovering from that insult I just threw at you?
Yeah, it's awesome. So apparently I breathe too much in the mic.
Yeah.
So that makes it fun for the editor, for our wonderful editor, Caitlin.
Word from our corporate office. Chris breathes in the mic, into the mic
Tell him
too
to quit
much.
breathing so heavy.
Yeah.
It's because I'm deaf and I just can't hear how bad I'm breathing.
Are you actually
My wife asks me all the time, "Why are you breathing so hard?" And I'm like, "I didn't even know you could hear me." All the time. I'm like, didn't know. Just happened.
That's awesome. Well, it's story time, and we're here with Liam. Liam, how you doing, man?
I'm doing fantastic. Yeah.
Welcome to the freaking show, man.
Yeah.
Thank you
We're
so
excited
much.
to have you.
No, I'm happy to be here. Super happy I was able to connect with Sam and get connected with all you guys.
So how did you guys meet and get to know each other?
Honestly, it's kind of the randomest thing. So a buddy of mine, I go to BYU, and a buddy of mine named Caden, he invited a bunch of mutual friends to go hike the hot springs down in Spanish Fork.
Uh-huh.
And so I showed up, and Sam was among that group. And we talked a little bit, not a ton. And afterwards, Caden mentioned to me, he's like, "Hey, Sam's actually involved in this this nonprofit organization that focuses on addiction recovery and sexual addiction recovery. And I know that's something that you've gone through and you're interested in. And so I thought it would be really cool if you two would connect." And I was like, absolutely, I'd love that.
Heck yeah, man.
So I got Sam's number. We started talking. We had a couple of chats, and he thought that it would be a good idea if I was able to come on the podcast and share a little bit about my story. So here we are.
Hey, dude, honestly, I was listening to you just kind of tell me about what your life has been like, and A, I related to you a ton, but B, I was just like, holy crap, this is going to be so helpful for other people to see. So I'm excited to dig into this.
Yeah, me too. We all have a journey, and I have always been excited to look forward to the day where, I could stop focusing so inwardly on myself and hopefully maybe bless other people's lives and make an impact on other people. So this might be where that starts, and I'm so happy for that.
Heck yeah, man.
love it,
Thanks for your willingness to jump in here with us and share your heart, share your story.
So Liam, dude, I want to start kind of just at the beginning, because you have a pretty interesting story just with your relationship with God and what that was like for you as a kid. Can you tell us, as a child, who was God to you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think growing up, I had a very, very kind of disconnected view of who God was. I grew up kind of non-denominational Christian, and so we kind of went to a church. I was too young to really understand, but when I was around 8 or 9 years old, my parents converted to Messianic Judaism, actually. So
For those people, for people who are listening and don't know what that is, can you just give us,
Including me.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a very niche, not even quite a religion. It's more of just an ideology or a theology. There's no real organized church or system behind it. But
Okay.
what my parents believe essentially is they believe in Jesus Christ, that he was the Son of God, that he died for our sins. Everything that a normal Christian I think would believe, with the caveat that when Jesus Christ in the New Testament said, "If you love me, keep my commandments," well, the prevailing commandments at the time was the law of Moses. It was the festivals, it was Passover, it was Yom Kippur, it was all of these things that the Jews celebrated for them to anticipate the coming of the Messiah. And they simply believe that that law is still in effect. So instead of celebrating those things in anticipation, we celebrate them in remembrance. And so I attended synagogue on Saturdays. We read the Torah and sang hymns and all of those things. And I almost had a bar mitzvah.
Really?
Didn't quite get there. I wasn't willing to memorize the scriptures necessary to actually go through with that. But yeah,
And that's when you're 15, right?
13.
13?
13 years old.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, it was really it was an interesting time, but I feel like just kind of as I got older, my parents separated, and my dad, who kind of just followed what my mom did, he was always agnostic, kind of started doing his own thing, and my mom kept going to synagogue, and I was kind of caught in the crossroads, and frankly, that particular faith didn't really have the answers that I was looking for, and I didn't feel a personal connection to God in any way there.
What were the answers you were looking for at the time?
I had so many questions about faith and justice and mercy and what happens after we die, and how can like what is the purpose of this life, and why are we here? And when I would talk to my mom about some of these things, or problems that I had with I guess what you would call sometimes like traditional Christian values, she didn't really have a good answer for me. And that bothered me, and so it kind of took me on a journey. I was agnostic for quite some time, I'd say. It was like, maybe there's something, maybe there isn't. But it really wasn't until I was like 17-ish that door kind of started to open back up to me again, and I started to reconsider my relationship with God.
Wow.
So how did that door start getting opened up? Is it friends? Is it family?
Yeah, it was a combination of both. So when I was a sophomore in high school, beginning of my sophomore year, I had a friend of mine who he told me, "Hey, I'm going to try out for the cross country team at our high school, and I think you should join me." And at the time, I was struggling with a lot of things. I was struggling with drugs and alcohol, and just generally not making great decisions. Being a hooligan, being an annoying 15-year-old, and
Because
so
you were looking for something.
I was struggling to find acceptance socially. I was struggling to make friends that I respected, and I really just generally wasn't happy with where I was in life. And so when my friend told me, "Hey, I'm gonna go try out for the team," I thought, great. I mean, I got nothing better to do. And, I had played sports mostly growing up. I'd been on a swim team for a long time. So I thought, I can hang with these guys at least. And so I tried out for the team, and I just remember meeting a lot of the guys, and a lot of them were, as I would later come to find out, members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and or just Christian generally. And they were such an incredible example to me of Christ-like love and service and just living. They were fun, outgoing, ambitious, energetic. They had a great time with each other. They hung out, they played sports, they did everything, and they didn't have to break commandments to do it.
Wow.
And
cool.
And they were high achieving as well. One of the guys that I was good friends with, or ended up becoming really good friends with, he was the valedictorian for my class. And he's going on to med school now and running marathons and all this crazy stuff. And so it was I just got plugged in with this incredible group of people. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, at the time, right? I was a sophomore still. And I thought to myself, wow, these people live the kind of life that I want to live. They have what I would like to have. And they're happy, and I'm not. So I kind of made the decision, and so towards the end of the sophomore year, I remember I had continued to struggle on and off with drugs and alcohol a little bit, and I remember I came to my dad, who I was living with at the time, and he.
And were you struggling at the time with a sexual addiction at all too?
Yeah. So that was, I hadn't really come to an understanding that was a serious problem. I didn't really understand. I was initially exposed to pornography at a very young age. I think I was like 7 or 8.
Wow.
And it had just kind of been something that I had lived with and done for that entire period of time. And it hadn't quite occurred to me that, like, I understood that it was shameful, and I understood that
You needed to hide it.
Yeah, exactly. But I didn't understand the severity of the toll that it took on me as a person.
Wow.
And so that was all kind of happening at the same time, right? I was struggling with my friends. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. I was kind of coping with it with, these drugs and this alcohol, and as well as pornography, right? And that was kind of all kind of pooling together. And I remember I told my dad one time, I was like, man, I really like these cross-country guys, but they're just too straight-laced for me. Like, they're too just good. and I can never be like that. And I remember my dad, he just kind of chuckled, and he's like, well, we'll see about that. And, he had his, he had that fatherly wisdom in retrospect, and he could kind of see where things would go.
And were you open with your dad about any of your addictions at all? Or did you keep everything under wraps?
Not my sexual addiction. He was aware of my drug use, and he was aware of my alcohol use, and he was.
Was that because you were open with him, or because he found it, or just noticed things? Or?
Yeah, I was open with him about it. He understood, like, one of the things that I'm grateful for that my dad did for me growing up was he was very, very consistent about letting me be an adult. And there was many times where he's like, I can't stop you from doing these things. Like, legitimately, I can't. I can't be there 24/7. So just tell me. Just let's talk about it. Like, why are you doing these things? And it was really helpful. And so that summer, I kind of went cold turkey, at least from everything.
Porn included?
No, not porn. So that was
almost everything.
Almost everything. Yeah, I went cold turkey from the substances, at least the physical substances. And so I just kind of, I made a very big shift in my life. That year was really difficult for me. I went cold turkey from everything and everyone. So all of my friends that I had been with that were also in that addictive lifestyle to substances, I cut off as well. And so that meant that my junior year of high school, I sat alone every day for lunch. I didn't go to anyone's houses. But I took some harder classes in high school. I got a 4.0. I started running track as well, training year round. And it just put me kind of on this momentum wheel where I was making improvements with my life. But this whole time, I was still struggling with pornography. But like I said, I didn't understand that it really was a problem. I wasn't mature enough to really see that. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really until my senior year, towards the end, I had kind of achieved all of these, like worldly things that separated me from those guys. I had the grades, I was in leadership, I was doing well in my sports, I had a girlfriend, like, all these things that were like, the world would consider, kind of honorable and good things to have done. But I went to my mom and I was like, I'm still not happy, in spite of all these things. What's going on? Yeah. What am I doing wrong?
You're still searching.
Yeah, I was still looking for something more. And so she told me for the thousandth time, she's like, I think you need to reach out to God, Liam. You need to reconnect with God. And she always said that every time, and it always just kind of annoyed me because I'm like, of course that's the answer. Yeah, it's, kind of a cop-out answer in my opinion, or it was at the time. But for some reason, it kind of resonated with me, and I was like, well, I'll do this, I'll get it out of the way, and then I can move on with my life. Because this whole time I was kind of like indecisive, didn't really have an opinion about God. And so I remember I knelt down and I said a prayer, and it was very simple. And I just asked I was like, well, God, if you're real, then, I gave him some examples of some things that could happen that I would recognize that would be a sign that, that he's there. And closed the prayer and kind of forgot about it. Didn't think much more about it. But I realized about a week later, I was kind of reflecting about what had happened, about that moment. And I realized that actually quite a few of the very specific things that I mentioned in my prayer had actually happened.
Wow.
And I was kind of taken aback, and I was like, whoa.
Do you remember what those are? Or a couple of them are?
Yeah, there were a couple things. They're pretty private, and they're pretty sacred to me, so I tend not to share them. But it was an incredible experience because it was for the first time where I realized like there's a higher power. I still don't know what it is, but there's something, because I asked for something very specific and it happened. So I was like, okay, God's real. Not quite sure what to do with that information. And so I kind of just started searching a little bit. I attended a bunch of different churches, and I started looking around for a bunch of things. And it was in this time that I started kind of talking to my mom about, okay, well, what should I be doing? What changes should I be making in my life? And she mentioned...
And you're how old right now?
I was 17.
Okay.
I was 17 at the time. At the end of my senior year, I was like a year... my parents put me in school a little early, so I graduated at 17 and turned 18 that summer.
I know the feeling. I turned 17 during my senior year.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah.
I was 16 during part of my senior year.
Yeah. Similar situation. Yeah. It ended up working out because now I'm like still more or less on the same track. But yeah, it was tough because I was a small kid in high school, so it wasn't great as far as like bullying and sports and stuff. It put me at a disadvantage.
I was like, if you guys saw him now, he's not a small dude.
What are you, like 6'4"?
Yeah, 6'3" now. And I've learned how to go to the gym. So now I've put on a little bit of weight, and it's been nice. But yeah, high school was definitely tough.
So you're in the search for God, and you start attending different congregations.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so tell us about that journey and how you picked one.
Yeah.
Obviously Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
So walk us through that process.
Yeah, so I attended a bunch of different churches. I mean, you name it. If I didn't attend it, I at least researched it. So, I mean, I went to a Methodist church, I went to a Baptist church, I went to just non-denominational, which is kind of what I had gone to when I was very young, under the age of 8. And it was all fine and well, but once again, I just felt like there was a lack of structure, and there was a lack of just like communal agreement as far as like what they were doing there. And so and that was me. That's how I felt. And so a friend of mine invited me to attend her church, and it was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I went, never really heard of it. I had heard of Mormons, but I'd never made the connection that those were the same church.
Yeah.
And so I went, and frankly, it was kind of an odd experience. I had never read a hymn book, so like they were like skipping lines, and I was like, where are we going? I'd never seen the sacrament before, so like this dude just hands me a plate of bread and I didn't know what to do with it. So I'm
"What
just
are
kind of
we
like,
doing here?"
I'm just like, okay, so they take the bread and they eat it and then they pass it to the next person, like trying not to look dumb, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a fast and testimony meeting, which is very unique to the church, to that church. And there was some old people getting up and saying some weird stuff. So I, in all like measurable respects, it should have been a bad experience that deterred me away. But at the very end, the bishop, or like the leader of the congregation, he stood up and spoke, and I felt, it was the first time in my life that I like identifiably felt the Spirit. Like I felt something real, just like, I mean, how do you define the Spirit? It just spoke to me. And the room, it felt like the room was filled with light. And as I left the church, I took a longer route home. I drove through the mountains near my house, and I just pondered and reflected and prayed the whole time. And I was talking with God, and I was thinking to myself, that was different. There's something different about that. So I think this is where you're telling me to go. And so I continued to search. I did some research on my own, with just in my own time. And I eventually, over the next 2 or 3 months, started meeting with the missionaries. And they taught me incredible things.
So here's my question is, how did you react when, obviously, they probably would have talked to you about chastity, and what was going through your mind as they started to have conversations with you about chastity and getting rid of porn in your life?
Yeah.
Because I really want to focus in on that and see, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, definitely. So they tried to keep that lesson pretty short and sweet because they were sister missionaries, so it's 2 young women aged 19 and 20, and I'm a 17, almost 18-year-old guy, so it's like I'm their peer, all right? And so that was a bit of an awkward conversation for them to have. So they just kind of showed up. Okay. They're like, here's the pamphlet, and we read it, and I was like, yep, my mom has told me about this stuff. I was kind of expected to live the law of chastity in my house growing up. So like, if you have a girl over, doors got to be open, no sex before marriage. That was standard for me growing up.
But porn was left out of that conversation.
Yeah, and through no fault of their own, really. My parents were older. My mom had me when she was 40.
Sure.
So pornography for them was like a magazine that you could buy in a gas station. Yeah. And that was kind of the extent of it. And they weren't really technologically super savvy. And so they had no idea what was really out there and what you could access and the ease of access that people had. So I'm sure if my parents understood the cesspool that exists on the internet of that, they would have.
I'm sure they did. They just maybe not talk to you about it. So were you open with them yet? Had they know you struggled with it at all?
My mom like caught me once when I was a kid, and I just like, after that, I was just very careful to hide it more.
You're like, hey mom, thanks for catching me a long time ago, because I've never looked at it again.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely not the case. No, she I think she knew, but I don't know if she knew the right way to approach it, or if she felt like maybe it was just better to let me go through that journey myself, because it seemed like it was, I was on my way there.
So take us to the height of your addiction. Like, what does that look like? Like, where are you going? Are you acting out like weekly, daily? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, there was a point in time where it was pretty. I think my junior and senior year of high school, it was a daily thing, and it was honestly kind of controlled, honestly, in a sense. Like, I had a time where it was like I got home from school and I watched pornography for like a little bit, and then I went and did my homework. It was just like kind of systematic.
Clockwork.
And it was just like part of my routine. And so that's kind of how it existed for a while. And there would be spouts of like, sometimes I'd watch it more, or maybe I'd go a day without it. But it was pretty much just like every day, that was part of what I did.
Did you ever have any sense that maybe your acting out with porn was tied into the same things that were causing you to go to drinking and other things?
At that point, no.
Okay.
It was just totally beyond me.
Wow.
It wasn't until I started learning about the law of chastity and learning about, and I, learning about, okay, pornography is an addiction. And so I went to my local church leader and I told him, I'm like, hey, listen, I was being prepared to be baptized. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I
Being
struggle
baptized into the LDS church, right?
in the LDS church. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I'm struggling with this. I have struggled with this. I need, like, please help me. Just because at this point I understood, okay, this is a problem. I didn't understand the connection that it had to my greater life. Like, I just thought, oh, this is a habit that I have. It's a bad habit. And it's actually an addiction.
Yeah.
And are you talking to your buddies about it at all either?
No,
Like, you're
no.
like, no, I'm
This
not
is
telling
like, this is
anybody
locked.
about it.
So
this is
essentially,
locked
from
down, yeah.
besides the one time that you got caught by your mom, no one really knew this was a part of your life.
Absolutely
it was kind
not.
of just, and then finally you're like, "Hey, I know this is hurting me. I want to
Mhm.
get right in my relationship with God." And you talk to
My bishop.
The bishop,
Yeah,
okay.
the bishop of the local congregation.
you weren't baptized yet.
No,
Okay.
I was not a member, and this is back in Washington where I grew up.
Okay.
And that was a very, very strange experience for me. Like, this is a guy who I barely know.
Yeah.
Talking to him about something that I had literally never talked to anyone about ever. And that was the first time I think I felt the relief that comes from confession. Like, finally being able to say, okay, like, I do this. This is part of what I do. It's not part of who I am, as I would later come to understand, but it's a problem. And over the next 5 years, up until now, I'd come to realize just how integrated those chains were, the chains of addiction were, with my childhood trauma, with the way I cope with stress, with the way that I deal with relationships, and how that manifests itself. I mean, it's like the picture of what pornography use actually represented in my life has expanded 100 times
Wow.
since that day, because I realized, wow, like, it really was a like, it was a side effect of the fact that I didn't have control over all of these different aspects of my life.
Yeah.
And that was the first, that was the start of that day when I went to him and I said, I need help, because I'm trying to stop. I want to get baptized. I'm trying to stop. I'm trying, but I can't really go more than like 3 days, 4 days.
So take us up to the present, how you've navigated this journey then with God. Obviously you got baptized.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like for you, and how have you gotten to the point where you're at now? Which I think we talked earlier, it sounds like you've had some pretty good sobriety, months and almost a year at some point.
Yeah. So from that point, I joined the church. I left for college. I went to a university in Western Washington for a year, and then COVID happened. Through that time, that was the first time when I moved to college, it was like a dramatic of enough change in my life. New place, new people, different church now, and all of this stuff. My mind was able to kind of focus on other things. And so I think I had a streak of like almost 2 months at the beginning of that school year, which was really cool. But I ended up having some slips, and I got on some dating apps, and that was like totally new for me. It's like, I'm in college, I'm on Tinder. It's like, it's a brave new world. Like I'm just like discovering.
It is brave to go on Tinder, right?
Yeah,
From what I hear.
it was pretty nuts. I do not recommend that for anyone, frankly. But
So did that take you into your addiction further when
It
you
did.
started like dating women and acting out with women?
it did, yeah. I acted out with a couple of people in real life, and I realized that was one connection I made. I'm like, okay, these things are not mutually exclusive. Like I thought I had that part of my life kind of under control, and that this was separate. And I realized, okay, they're really not. They are connected still. And then COVID happened. COVID-19, February. It hit Washington, like one of the first places was Seattle, and so we're shut down. I get sent home. And so I move in with my mom, who was living on the West Coast at the time, for a little bit. And I mean, I'm isolated. I'm stuck at home, and
COVID messed tons
a ton of people up. Yeah, and I was definitely one of them. I was acting out once or twice a day, and hating myself for it. Absolutely hating myself for it.
So how'd you get out of it?
Well,
What worked for you?
Yeah, I moved back to Spokane. I moved back to the east side of the state, and I started working. I was working in lumber. Actually, I was logging, and so just like manual labor every day, all day, because it was one of the only places I could get a job. And I started seeing this girl. She was a member of the church. We had gone to high school together, but we didn't really know each other then. And we started dating, and her family, I spent a lot of time at her family's house because, well, it's COVID. What else are you gonna do, you know? And we would have church at their house. We couldn't meet, the whole congregation. Right. And that was the first time in my life, I think, that I saw what the spirit looks like in a house, where a family that's imperfect, they got 6 kids, it's loud, it's messy, but they all love God and they all love Jesus Christ and they're trying to be like him. And I saw the spirit there in the home, and I just knew, I was like, that's what I want. Wow. That is what I want in my life, and I'm going to pursue that. And having her, my girlfriend at the time, and having that family that relationship ended up not working out, but I still talk to her dad. Actually, we just got lunch. Awesome. We got lunch last month when I was in town. Still very close relationships, and that helped me tremendously. But I also knew it was at that time that I felt impressed that I needed to serve an LDS mission. So I kind of started doing the preparations for that, saving up the money, doing the paperwork and everything. And I was talking with my leaders, the local leaders, and I was honest about them. I was honest with them. I'm like, hey, this is still a problem. Mm-hmm. I'm managing it better, maybe once a week, slowly but surely, but it really is still repetitive. And so they gave me the addiction recovery program. They gave me the book, but meetings weren't happening because it was COVID. Right. And so I didn't really know what to do with it. I kind of worked with it.
Did they not introduce you to online meetings? Because they were doing online meetings.
They did not. They did not introduce me to that, which is okay. I don't like it. It's okay because things have worked out. But it was still just like, at that point, for about 6 to 8 months before I left to serve my mission, it was kind of just, I was in kind of this repetitive stasis where I would act out. I knew it was bad. I'm just white knuckling it, basically, just mess up, try again, try harder. I didn't really know what changes to make. I didn't really understand the deep ties that it had to me as a person. I just thought it was a bad habit at this point. And so I leave on my mission, and frankly, I have 2 years of sobriety. It was fantastic. Where'd you go? I served my mission so part of it was in Orlando, Florida, waiting for my visa, and then the rest of the time I was in Portugal.
Sweet.
Which was an incredible experience, met incredible people, learned a new language. Unbelievable. Absolutely life-changing. And then I came home. And I came home to my dad, who had moved houses. So it's like new house. He's not a member. And it was tough. My dad is a wonderful person, but he struggles with some things. And specifically, he exhibits very like narcissistic tendencies, and he's also on the autism spectrum, and so it's just very difficult. Like he just has like a very unique blend of attributes that make it very difficult to connect with him and deal with him.
So did that kind of set you off back into like porn and some of the old patterns of thinking, being back with your dad?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, and I don't blame him.
Sure.
I don't blame him at all, but it did. And so I came home, and like 3 days after I came home from my mission,
Right back into it.
Wow.
right back into it. Just, I had open access. And
what was that like for you, dude? I mean, what's going through your mind as you're like,
That-
dude, 2 years,
Mhm.
and suddenly I've gone back to this thing I thought I'd sworn off. What was going through your mind?
That was probably the most depressed I've ever been in my life.
Wow.
There was a 2-ish month span between when I came home from my mission and when I was going to go back to college. At this point, I'd been accepted to BYU down here in Utah, and so I was going to go there starting in January of 2023. But I got home, and it was really bad. I had never been that bad. I would stay in my room for days. I wouldn't leave. I'd leave to get food and go to the bathroom. And like, that was it. I could not, like,
It's
just
funny
the
when I
weight of
said
it.
introduce us to or bring us to the height of your addiction.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, it's just high school stuff, and
Yeah.
and now we're like getting to the height of your addiction.
Yeah, this was the height of it, frankly. It took a long time, but it was just the perfect storm of no social connections, right? I mean, I'm home, but all of my friends that I'd made in high school or college are gone. They're not there. All of a sudden, I'm coming to the realization that, oh my gosh, like all of the things that people have told me about my dad and the things that he does that I denied because I wasn't able to see it. And like, in your 14-year-old kid, it's like, your dad is your world, your dad is your hero. So like, the idea that he's imperfect or does bad things, it's like, it's either a lie or it's not. And I couldn't believe that it was true at that time. And so coming home, it literally took me leaving the country for 2 years and coming back to realize that, like, oh, this is the situation that I'm in with my family.
And that sends you into a spiral.
And it's not a great one. Yeah. And it just sent me into a spiral. And so
like, everybody's like, okay, how do we get out of this? Like,
Yeah.
how did you go from like days into this
Yeah.
addiction? Like, you're spending so much time on it
mhm.
to where, like Sam just said, you got like
Yeah.
close to a year of sobriety. Like, how do you get there?
It was a long process, and it was a process that took a lot of tears and a lot of humility. So I eventually went, I moved to college, moved down here to Provo, and which was a good reprieve, got me out of that situation. At least it put some distance between me and all of the issues that were going on in my home, which, I understand not everyone has that opportunity, but it was afforded to me, and it was good. It didn't solve the problem, but at least put, a couple 100 miles between us. And that gave me the space that I needed to just start making my own decisions. I started attending recovery meetings every week.
Like, yeah.
And that was very new. I'm in a room with 30 to 40 other young men who are just like me, and they are standing up and saying, "Hi, my name is blank, and this is day one or this is day 0, or this is day 74. And they're just talking honestly about themselves, about Jesus Christ and his atonement, and practical applications as well as spiritual applications for overcoming this. And I started working more heavily with some real guidance in the 12-step program. And so I started to see some progress there. I had, a month here, a month there where I would be clean. Excuse me. And then I think April-ish timeframe, April of 2023, I was in a recovery meeting, and there's an older gentleman there who I'd never met before. And he gets up and starts to, he doesn't get up, he shares. He starts sharing about all of these amazing recovery things and his journey. And I just felt very impressed. I had been praying for some time because in the addiction recovery meetings, they emphasize very heavily, having a sponsor and having a mentor and a guide. And so I'd been praying for quite some time as to how to find someone that could fill that role for me. And this guy is sharing his story, and the Spirit impresses it on me. It's like, that's him right there. And didn't know him, didn't even know his name. I wrote him a note. I had to leave early, so I wrote him a note with my phone number, gave it there to him, and I left. He texts me. We go out to lunch, and that was the beginning of what's now almost been a 2-year relationship.
Wow.
And he has been an absolute blessing in my life, and he helped me. He has taught me so many incredible things and given me so much good perspective and helped me really apply what I was doing with the 12-step program. He kind of added some things onto it, some things that he had learned in therapy and just over his almost 20 years in recovery. And so that really started the journey.
His name isn't Jim, is it?
No.
Okay. Sounded like a Jim I know.
Yeah, everyone needs a gym. I
Right?
would say that. Everyone needs a gym.
So Liam, as we're
Yeah.
wrapping up, I think what would be most helpful, probably, honestly for me, and probably for a lot of people who are hearing you right now, is what you would say in just 30, 45 seconds about when you came back from your mission
Mhm.
and you relapsed and you went into a place of shame and you didn't know what to do. What would you have gone back and told to younger Liam? Like, what do you wish you could have said to him?
Yeah.
And helped him to understand about how to fight the fight that you've been fighting?
Yeah. I would say 2 main things. One, connect. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection.
Right.
And 2, your brain is trying to help you. Your brain is trying to help you. And so pay attention to it. When you feel the need to lust, when you're lusting, when you want to go and look at pornography, that is a clear indicator that something else is wrong in your life. You're not feeling loved. You're not working out. You're not eating right. Your relationships are deteriorating. It could be a myriad of things. But your brain is telling you what's wrong. It's telling you something's wrong. You need to go find it. And that has been the main thing, connection and recognizing that your brain is trying to help you. Your brain loves you. Your brain wants what's best. It wants what it thinks is best for you. And it's going to try and do that. And you just got to thank it and look for where you're missing something. Wherever your values are.
You're saying in feeling those things, that's been the thing
Yeah.
that's changed for you in recovery?
Yeah,
Wow,
most definitely.
cool.
And connection. I'd emphasize connection as well. Just
Gotcha.
connection with friends, with family, with people who understand. Reaching out all the time.
Yeah,
Wow.
totally.
Well, dude, you got a song?
I think I do. Yeah, I think I do.
Song that resonates with your heart, man.
Yeah, it's it feels it probably feels very unrelated to addiction recovery, but the song is called Burn, Burn, Burn by Zach Bryan.
Burn, Burn, Burn by Zach Bryan.
Yeah.
And why that song?
So I started getting into country when I came home from my mission, and this song in particular, it's so unbelievably nostalgic. I listen to this song, and frankly, I don't relate with most of what he's talking about, but it makes me feel, it makes me reminisce about a childhood that was pure, that was full of friends, full of joy, and how to build a life in the future that looks like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just gives me a very hopeful and optimistic feeling about the life that I can live moving forward.
Yeah.
And so even though the song itself says nothing about Jesus or it doesn't say anything about addiction, but it does say something about living a life that's connected and happy and meaningful.
Wow.
Heck yeah.
Love it, dude.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thanks for meeting with us. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for jumping on here with us, man.
Thank
For those
you
of you
guys.
listening, don't forget to give us a 5-star review so we can spread this message to more people. You can donate and become an outsider. That helps us to spread this message as well. And follow us on social media at Unashamed Unafraid. And here is Burn, Burn, Burn.